innocent until proven guilty, a right to a fair trial. The author of this bill does not think that these things are important. He thinks that he, down in Montgomery, ought to have the power to throw you behind bars for a minimum of 24 hours without a trial for quote-unquote rioting.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
So we've been tracking another bill in the legislature this session, an anti-speech bill, HB 2. Last week it passed out of committee. It advanced to the full House for consideration. Still hasn't been voted on in the full House yet. You can see our interview with Felicia Scalzetti about it for more details. But the crux is this: it further restricts the rights of working Alabamians to picket their boss and protest the state. And that's an issue. The bill would hold innocent people in prison for a minimum of 24 hours. That's not an opinion. That is a fact. Because anybody arrested under this legislation is subject to that mandatory holding time.
And because they have not been convicted of a crime, they are innocent.
Right. And in fact, the author of the bill admitted that this was not a byproduct. This was not a byproduct of the bill. Holding innocent people behind a cage for 24 hours is a purpose. It is an explicit purpose that is his intent. In the public hearing, he said, quote, "That's one of the reasons that I put the mandatory holding time in the bill. All those people got their charges dropped." Translation, all those people were innocent. All those people were innocent. All those people that were protesting police brutality in 2020 in Alabama. They got their charges dropped, and he wants to punish them for participating in a protest. And that's, when we talk about freedom and liberty and constitutional rights, this should be chief among them. Innocent until proven guilty. A right to a fair trial. The author of this bill does not think that these things are important. He thinks that he, down in Montgomery, ought to have the power to throw you behind bars for a minimum of 24 hours without a trial for quote-unquote rioting, which, let's remember under this definition, does not necessitate you having damaged a lick of property, hurt a single hair on a person's head, or even have been present at the protest, because you can also be arrested and charged with a felony for quote-unquote funding a riot. We remember that I donated to bail funds to get people out of prison who were arrested unconstitutionally, illegally, and they had their charges dropped. I donated to bail funds to help get them out, and I'm sure many of you did as well. Under this bill, we could be charged with felonies for supporting our brothers and sisters and getting them out of jail, whether they were wrongfully arrested at a protest for racial justice or on the picket line. All that you have to do to be arrested and convicted under this bill, if you're at the protest, is not play Simon Says properly with the police and stay after an order to disperse, and then have them think that you potentially pose a danger to property or persons. This is all totally giving cops more power. And then if you're convicted, you're looking at 30 days mandatory minimum. A 30-day mandatory minimum. People are arrested.
That's life-changing.
Yeah. People are arrested on bogus charges all the time. And like we said, dozens of folks were arrested in 2020 in Alabama improperly, and they had their charges dropped. This only further enables that behavior. And so with all of this as a prelude or as a backdrop, let's compare this to the rhetoric around another bill that's working its way through our legislature, which is a constitutional carry bill.
Before you dive into that, Jacob,
Okay.
I want to mention that just last weekend, there were 2 separate deaths at the Madison County Jail here in Huntsville, Alabama. And that's where you would be. The
Yeah.
Blue Roof Inn is known here. That's where you would be. 2 people died. and this is not the first time this has happened, people die within 24-hour stays of jails.
Right.
I know folks who've experienced that with folks that are in their network, friends, family members. Chances are some of you listening has either experienced going into jail, or you have loved ones who have gone to jail, and even a 24-hour stay on charges that are totally bogus, that you'll never be convicted of, can end your life.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's so serious, I think, both from a broader issue of we should have the right to picket, we should have the right to peacefully protest, just that, the assault on that is a disgrace.
Mm-hmm.
But then the individual implications on if you are one of these people who are snared up in this, and let's be real about the type of people they're going to go after.
Right. Yeah. It's not going to be wealthy people. It's not going to be
Right.
people at the Brooks Brothers riots.
Right.
That's not who's going to get arrested under this bill. So let's compare that rhetoric, the rhetoric around the anti-speech bill, where they are playing up outside agitators, quote unquote, potential damage to property, all of these things, and they're playing up the need for law and order, and all. Let's compare that to the rhetoric around the constitutional carry bill. The bill's author, Senator Allen of Tuscaloosa, said this in its support, quote, "As an elected official who swore to uphold the constitutions of this state and country, I will always do everything in my power to preserve the rights of Alabamians, especially those granted by the Second Amendment." You've got the same people throwing around their support for the Constitution, for this constitutional carry bill, even with acknowledgement that there might be some risk. I heard Senator Sam Gavan on the radio talking about his support for this bill and recognizing that it's faced opposition from cops because cops don't like the idea of the people that they interact with being armed. And, to a certain extent, I guess who can blame them? So the police associations are very much opposed to this bill. And in talking
This
about...
is like the one time
Right.
ever where the right wing and the cops will not be on the same page.
Right. Yeah. And so he was talking about, he was like, look, I respect the police's opinion and I appreciate them, but I just think this freedom is so important that it overrides their concerns, and and they're trampling on these freedoms with the first bill that we were talking about. I mean, why the concern for the Constitution when it comes to guns, but not to speech and assembly? As far as human life goes, far more risk comes from folks walking around with guns all the time. Of course. But where there's less risk to owners and bosses and campaign donors when you have an unorganized group of folks, some of whom carry guns. They are much less threatening to the people who donate to these campaigns than even an unarmed but organized group of workers. And that's the difference. They don't like people having opinions that are different than them. They don't like people expressing those opinions, and they certainly do not like workers standing up to the boss. And so if it takes trampling on freedoms to empower the boss or to empower the state, they're willing to do it. But they will really talk up their commitment to those freedoms when it comes to guns. And still, I do not think this constitutional carry bill applies to picket lines. I believe under this bill, guns will still be prohibited at picket lines and
protest. Yeah. So that's the other thing is you're not allowed to carry at protest or picket lines. Again, I can see the logic behind that. Whether it's good or bad, I'm not going to make that call. But something we should mention here is that as much as they love to talk about Second Amendment rights, we know that in effect, in practice, who gets to exercise those without punishment is also very, very disparate, because if you are a young black man legally carrying a firearm, the response you're going to get from law enforcement is different. And poor folks carrying firearms are going to be treated differently than, the suburbs, the wealthy suburbs. Chances are, if you're in Mountain Brook and you have firearms, you're not very concerned about the police.
Yep.
But if you're in North Huntsville, you should be. And that really pisses me off as a born and bred Southerner, as someone who owns guns and grew up learning how to shoot guns. I fully support people's right to have firearms. I will always have mine. And, so that's something I think we should put out there. It's not like we do exist. There are left-wing people who are pro-gun. I don't want to say pro-gun, but pro Second Amendment rights, I suppose. But it's just it's infuriating that, like you said, this is like the one constitutional issue they really love to talk about. Never mind they're violating all your other constitutional rights in the same committee hearing sometimes. The same damn day, the same people writing the same bills. But then, put on this whole facade about constitutional rights, which even that is so utterly narrow and inequitable in practice.
Right. Exactly. That's the issue. And I mean, like Adam said,
it shows what they fear.
Right.
They are afraid of people power. They are afraid of those diverse crowds they saw throughout the summer of 2020, of young folks, older folks, black, white, gay, straight. It was an incredibly diverse collection of people, and it was happening not just in New York and L.A. and Chicago, but in Huntsville and Birmingham and Mobile and Athens and Decatur and small towns. And I think that scares them to see interracial solidarity. And it scares them to know that workers are on picket lines and may take matters into their own hands and try to shape their own destinies in terms of their own workplace.
Right. Yep.
You're pissing me off today, Jacob. Not you. Just
yeah.
You're bringing the content today that just it's quite irritating.
Bad news bear today. Well, let's go ahead and get to our next segment. I think we may have a fun one. We may get to that Macy's clip at the end. It's just really quick, and it'll be just something fun to laugh at.
But if you haven't already, please do participate in the Hometown Action, where you can contact your legislator. It's very easy. If nothing else, you need to know where they stand, and you need to know that they've heard from you.
Right. Yep.
So send them an email, call their office, and say, hey, I sent you an email. I'd like a response.
hmtn.link/HB2. hmtn.link/HB2 is the information there. The attorneys of Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs are proud to represent working people in Alabama and across the Southeast. They have over 100 years of experience representing injured workers in workers' compensation, personal injury, and disability claims. Let their attorneys help you when you get injured on the job. You can find them at www.mtandj.com or 855-617-9333. Let Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs help you when you get injured on the job. Again, the website is www.mtandj.com or the phone number 855-617-9333. No representation is made that the quality of legal services is greater than the quality of legal services from other law firms.